Watercolors getting muddy is one of the most common beginner frustrations, and in this video I'm going to show you exactly why it happens and one simple technique that fixes it permanently. I'm calling it the puzzle method. So instead of painting the entire colorful subject in one go, you paint only the segments that aren't touching each other first and letting each area dry before filling in the gaps. To demonstrate this technique step by step, I'm painting a dragon fruit in watercolor, the perfect subject because of the bold contrast between hot pink and green tones. I'm gonna take you through each step slowly, painting those spiky leaves, then establishing local color in segments, adding shadow, and finally the darkest details and texture, plus a quick glaze of yellow to create that sun-kissed look. Whether you're a complete beginner or you've been painting on your own or maybe following my tutorials for a while, this method will be super helpful and it might just change the way you work. So here's our fruit and here's my outline. Watch what I do first because this is where the puzzle method starts. So instead of painting the overall shape, I'm going to isolate the leaves and the bracts first. Those are the pointed green flaps on the outside of the fruit. They're called bracts and they're actually one of the trickiest parts to paint because they sit right up against that deep pink skin. So they're the perfect place to put the puzzle method to work. You can start by wetting the paper with clear water, but you can also wet each spiky leaf with very diluted green paint. I do this because the color makes it much easier to see the boundaries of your working shape. Clear water just sort of disappears on white paper. And you want it to look like this when you tilt your paper, so pretty wet but not dripping. And then I drop in some quinacridone red at the base and hooker's green at the tip. I let those two colors find each other and blend together naturally. That's classic wet into wet watercolor technique and it's where all the magic happens. Then I move straight to the next segment, skipping the one right beside it. The same process, diluted green or clear water to wet the shape, red, and then green at the tip. Let me show you one more time at an angle so you can follow along at home. Diluted green first to prepare the paper, a touch of red on each side, and then plenty of green at the tip. As that green spreads, you can bring in a little bit of blue leaning green or even a touch of pure blue to suggest some shadows. If you see some dry areas, maybe a tiny amount of burnt sienna around the edges to add a little warmth and age. But don't overdo it at this stage. For this first layer, we want to keep everything light and quite diluted. We're just establishing the local color of these spiky leaves. We need to leave plenty of room to add shadows later. I'm going to work through every bract now, always skipping the one next to a segment I just painted. And that's the whole point. I never work next to something that's still wet. That's how we keep our edges crisp and our colors clean. You'll notice that some of these spiky leaves only need a thin strip of green, while others are deeper and darker, and I'm using more of my blue leaning green in those areas. And right at the tip, and also up on top, down at the base where the fruit was attached to the stem, things get a little drier and more weathered looking, so I'm bringing in some very diluted burnt sienna there. Now, and this is the part people always rush, we need to wait until everything is completely dry. I know it's tempting to jump straight back in, but give it at least 30 minutes to an hour. Maybe make a coffee or do what I usually do, jump over to another painting in the meantime. While these are drying, I'm going to paint a quick iris in my sketchbook and then we'll come back and fill in the segments we skipped. Now let's come back to our fruit, and the segments we painted are completely dry. You can see those clean, crisp edges, no bleeding. That's the puzzle method doing its job. And in this step, we're gonna fill in the gaps between the spiky bracts with our base red color, just establishing the local color of the fruit skin. I'm using quinacridone red again, but any red you love will work here. If you look closely at a real dragon fruit, you'll notice the skin isn't actually one flat red color. There's quite a bit of variation from maybe cool magentas and even all the way to warm corals. But here's the thing, at this stage, that color variation shouldn't be your priority, not even close. If you ask any experienced watercolor artist what actually creates a convincing sense sense of three-dimensional form on paper, the answer will be most likely tonal values, meaning lights and darks. So not color, but value. So the most important thing in this step is to match the overall value of your red to the value of the green and red we laid down in step 1. Keep everything light and diluted if you're thinking in terms of a value scale from 1 to 10. I often include this little diagram in my tutorials because it's quite helpful to visualize how much water you need to have on your palette. We're sitting somewhere around level 4, 5, maybe maximum 6 in some areas. So pale enough that we still have plenty of room to build shadows on top later on. And while the paint is still wet, you can drop in some small touches of other colors if you want to add a little bit of life. I'm dotting a tiny amount of Hooker's green here and there, and maybe in a few areas a little bit of burnt sienna. Just small gestures, don't overwork it. And it's going to look incomplete right now, and that's exactly right. Let's trust the process. What we're not doing at this stage is shadows. So no cast shadows, no dark edges, just flat, clean, local color. We let that dry completely, and only then do we come back to build the shadows on top. Walk away, maybe tea, a sketchbook, whatever works for you, but let it dry. So this is the step where everything clicks into place. We're adding cast shadows now, and because our local color is completely dry underneath, we can work freely without any risk of bleeding or mudding up what's already built underneath. That's the whole point of the sequence we've been following, and I'm starting up on top with the leaves again. I'm using mostly aqua green to paint the shadow each leaf casts on its neighbors, and then I work my way down, adding cast shadows of these so-called bracts, these leafy spikes along the body of the fruit. Before you paint a single shadow, take a moment to decide where your light is coming from and commit to it. In this painting, the light is coming roughly from the top right, strong and quite direct, like maybe midday or late midday sun coming straight at the fruit. That means two things. The shadows fall to the left and downward, and because the light is so strong, the shadow edges are quite sharp and clean, not soft and diffused. So my technique here is quite simple. I use the tip of my brush basically to outline the shadow shape first, and then I fill it in. Think of it as drawing with your brush before you paint. For color, I'm shifting away from my base red now. You can move to something darker like permanent alizarin crimson. It works beautifully here, and I'll be honest, I can never help myself. I always reach for a touch of dioxazine purple in my shadows. It shifts the shadow closer to blue on the spectrum, which is quite natural. As I move down the fruit, notice how the shadows become larger and more pronounced. The fruit curves away from the light source, so those lower areas are deeper in the shadow. And I'm responding to that by making my color mix progressively more saturated as I work downward. Just like that, watch what happens to the painting. Suddenly there's a lot more form and dimension, and the fruit goes from flat to real in just one layer of shadow. So that's the power of separating different layers, colorful segments first, then filling in the gaps with local color, and then the shadows. Each layer is doing its job without interfering with the one before it. One last drying session, and this is where the painting really comes alive. We're adding the fallen shadow beneath the fruit, and I'm using indigo as my base, but I'm not going to let it sit as flat gray wash. Shadows are never truly gray. They always contain color reflections from objects around them. So I'm pulling in purple, aqua green, maybe a touch of burnt sienna, all the colors we've already used in this painting. That visual connection between shadow and the fruit is what makes it feel like they belong in the same light. Keep that in mind whenever you paint shadows, so don't reach for gray or black. Instead, ask yourself, what colors are nearby? What might be reflecting into this shadow? Even a subtle hint of your main palette colors in the shadow area will make your painting feel more cohesive and alive. I'm also deepening the darkest shadows right underneath the little spiky segments where they meet the skin of the fruit. A little more purple here to push those areas back and increase the sense of three-dimensional form. Less is more at this stage, so 2 or 3 confident marks beats 10 hesitant ones. If you're not sure whether to add another stroke, you don't have to do it. Now, looking back at my reference photo, I can see there's an extra band of deep shadow right at the base of the fruit, suggesting a secondary light source coming at a different angle. So I'm going to add that in. It's a small detail, but it's the kind of thing that makes a painting feel observed rather than invented. And then, just for fun, I'm coming back with a quick glaze of yellow over the front segments. This is transparent azure yellow, which is perfect for glazing because it's clean and luminous without mudding up what's underneath. And if you are interested in learning more about yellow pigments or watercolor pigments in general, I have in-depth reviews on my channel where you can see the swatches, the mixes, and many different examples of how to use all the different watercolor pigments we love. So this is just a little bit of sun-kissed glow that wasn't there before. It takes 30 seconds and it's completely optional, but I love what it does. And there we have it. Clean reds, clean greens, very rich shadows, and not a hint of mud, and that comes down entirely to one thing: the order we painted in. 3 stages, local color in segments, skipping the neighboring segments, then cast shadows on top once everything is dry, final details and depth last of all. That's the puzzle method. Try it with any subject where different colors sit next to each other: flowers, fruit, colorful tropical birds, even architecture. The subject doesn't really matter, the sequence of layers does. Let me know in comments below if you tried it, and if you want to keep building on this, watch this playlist of essential watercolor techniques, and I'll see you next week with more watercolor magic.